All right, this is the second part of Indicator 22, and now we are going to cover the first two parts of the learning target because we are going to be talking about absolute value. Okay, so our learning target, I can compare absolute value and statements about order. And the next thing, I can describe absolute value of a rational number as its distance from zero on the number line and connect it to a real world situation. And then definitely we are going to incorporate the last learning target, which is I can write, interpret, and explain statements of order for rational numbers on a number line and in real world context. Okay, so everything is related to real world context. So when I say absolute value, and that is my vocabulary over here, okay, so absolute value is what we are talking about. All right, and very often you may have seen numbers written out like this, or a number written out like this. Okay, so these lines over here, the longer lines right next to the number, this is actually signifying absolute value. And the absolute value of a number is the distance between the number and zero on a number line. Okay, so distance. So this is the distance between the number and zero on the number line. Okay, so it's pretty clear cut. It's written like this. Okay, and distance between between the number and zero. So basically, like let's say I said absolute value of -2, or I said the absolute value of 2. So on the right I have positive numbers. On the left I have negative numbers being reflected off the positive side. Okay, I told you zero was your mirror. So if I'm saying -2, we can see -2 is here. We know that +2 is here. So when it's saying distance between the number and zero, so we are looking at, okay, what is the distance from 0 to -2? So what is this distance? So the distance is actually from here to here, or we can just write it this way. Let's say from here to 0 is going to be 2 units. So we are not doing positive, negative, anything here. You're just calculating the distance from something to 0. And this comes in really handy when we are calculating something related to the surface of water, for example. How much below the water, or how far is the whale swimming from the surface of the water. So we know that underwater is negative, but because we are calculating the distance of that whale to the surface, it becomes, this is the distance, so it is positive. Okay, so that's what this is. The surface of water is always considered a 0, okay, as on the number line. Then if I look at the distance from 2 over here to my 0 over here, so look, again, we have 2 units. Okay, so this is my distance from the number to 0 on the number line. That's what absolute value basically is. And then, so if it says what integers have an absolute value of 2, okay, what integers have an absolute value of 2. So when I'm looking at this, it's basically the distance of 2. That's what absolute value is. Distance of a number to 0. So there are actually 2 numbers that have the same distance. -2 and 2. So when I say which integers, please don't write just one integer, because for everything, for every, they are going to be two integers with the same absolute value, which will be a number and its total opposite. Both are going to be at the same distance from 0 on the number line, but on opposite sides. But the distance is the same. If I say absolute value of 8, that means it could be either positive 8 or negative 8, because it's 8 units to the right or 8 units to the left. So the distance is the same, but on opposite sides. So that's why if I say what two integers have the absolute value of 8, I would say 8 and negative 8, because they both are measuring the distance, but on opposite sides of 0. Okay, so please remember that. Let's go ahead and solve some problems relating to absolute value. And if I say, what is the absolute value of find the okay, so if it says find the absolute value of 3, okay, so if it's saying find the absolute value of 3, so if I have 3, this is how you normally write it. That signifies absolute value is equal to how much. So if I was taking a number line, for example, I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here is 3. If I had graphed it, then I look at, okay, what is my distance from 3 to 0? Okay, and when I look at that distance, it is actually what? 3 units. Okay, it's 3 units away. So absolute value of 3 is 3. Okay, same thing if I say what is the absolute value of negative 10? Well, you just think of how far is negative 10 from 0 on the number line. Okay, and that would be 10 units, so it becomes positive. Okay, because we are basically talking about the distance. It's not talking about negative or positive signs. Okay, so it becomes a positive integer. All right, now, let's say I give you something to, it could be a fraction, it could be a decimal, but whatever I give you guys, please remember absolute value will always come up to be positive. And there's only one time when it's negative, and I'll show you how in a minute. Okay, so if I say what is the absolute value of 5? Okay, so distance of 5 from 0 would be 5 units, so it is 5. Okay, what is the absolute value of negative 6? So the distance of negative 6 from 0 is going to be 6 units. What is the absolute value of 0? Obviously, 0 is going to be 0. All right. Absolute value of 1 and 9/10. So how far is 1 and 9/10 from 0? It is going to be 1 and 9/10. That is the distance. Okay. If I say what is the absolute value of negative 12 and 6/10, so it's asking how far is this number from 0? The distance is 12 and 6/10. All right. Same thing, even if I have a fractional thing, if I say how far or what is the absolute value of negative 6 and 1/3. So you're looking at how far is negative 6 and 1/3 from 0. It is 6 and 1/3 units away from 0. So this is my absolute value. These are my answers. Okay, so just want to show this to you. The only time when absolute value is negative is, all right, let's say I have this number, but now I have, if I had negative 5 also absolute value, the distance would be the same. It is 5, right? Because that's the distance of negative 5 from 0. Now look, if I had it written out like this, see, now when the negative sign is outside, So what is this now? We are finding the absolute value of 5, which is 5 within here, and then outside we have the negative sign. So that's when the negative sign comes in. Okay, that's the only time when an absolute value will be negative, is when the negative sign is outside the absolute value sign. Same thing if I write negative and absolute value of negative 5. We know that the absolute value of negative 5 is 5 because that's the distance. But look what we have outside. So here we go. All right. So please remember this when you are solving absolute value. Okay. Now let's go ahead and compare. We are going to go ahead and compare. So I have negative 1/2. There's no absolute value sign going on here. Okay. And I have absolute value of negative 1 1/4. Okay. So first step, find the answer for the absolute value before you start saying this is greater, this is less, because looking at that, you're thinking, okay, negative 1/2 is definitely going to be greater than negative 1 1/4 because it is to the right on the number line. But now we have the absolute value sign. Okay, so this is negative 1/2. And what is the distance of negative 1 1/4 from 0? So the distance is 1 1/4. So look how that became positive, because we're talking about the distance of that number. So now look, 1 is negative, 1 is positive. So obviously, absolute value of negative 1 1/4, because they're talking about the distance over here, is the greater number when you are comparing. So be careful about this. Okay. Let's do one in which I give you, well, if I give you 2 and absolute value of negative 5. So if I give this to you, 2 is already here. Absolute value of negative 5 means the distance of negative 5 from 0 is 5 units. Okay, so this is 5. So now look, I have 2 positive numbers, and think about it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is definitely the greater number here. Because if I was plotting this on the graph, okay, I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would be plotting this here, and I would be plotting this over here. So 5 is definitely to the right of 2 on the number line, and so therefore the absolute value of negative 5 is the greater number. Okay, so let's say I give you a question in which I'm talking about animals in the ocean or something. All right, so I'm just going to write. So this is the animal part, and then I have the elevation, which is the height of it from the surface of water. Okay, so we have shark. All right, and that this is going to be in feet. All right, so if I say shark is at negative 4 feet, then let me say I give you sea lion, and this is going to be at 5 feet. That means it's above water. We have the seagull, and this one is at 56 feet. So obviously it's flying or something. Then we have shrimp, which is at negative 65 feet. Then we have the turtle, which is at negative 22 feet. All right, so let's say this is given to you. All right, you have this table given to you. And then it's asking certain questions. All right, so this is a real world example. So the table is showing the elevations of several animals. And elevation basically is the height where it is from the surface of the water. Okay, so first and foremost, which animal is the deepest? So deepest, guys, obviously it has got to be underwater first and foremost. Okay, so if I was graphing this, I could just label it like this. And I'll say this is 0. So we have 10, 20. Remember, whenever you're graphing, your intervals need to be exactly the same. You can have this as 5 and then this can be 15. That is totally incorrect. The intervals have to be the same. Either you go 1, 2, 3, 4, go 5, 10, 15, 20, or 10, 20, 30, or 50, 100, 150. So whatever you do, your intervals have got to be the same, okay? So now remember, this side is the reverse of this side because it's like a mirror. 0 is your mirror, so negative 10, negative 20, negative 30, negative 40, negative 50, negative 60, negative 70. All right. So if I was graphing this and I look at, okay, the shark is at negative 4. So if this is 0, over here would be negative 5. So a little bit on this side because this would be 4. So remember, it's going to be the bang opposite of 4. So this is going to be your shark. Okay. Then we have the sea lion, which is at 5. So 5 is going to be here between 0 and 10. So this is my sea lion. Okay. Then I have my seagull, which is at 56. So this is 50. And then this is 60. So 56 is going to be somewhere over here. And so this is my seagull. And then I have shrimp, which is at negative 65, which is going to be somewhere here between negative 60 and negative 70. So this is over here is my shrimp. And then we have the turtle, which is at negative 22. So that is going to be here. Okay, so this is the turtle. So now let's look. When I say deepest, and guys, you can always make this number line this way, if that makes it easier for you. Okay, you make this as 0, and then everything at the bottom would be like this. Okay, top would be positive. So if you want to make the 0, the sea level or the water level, and then go this way, make the number line, that is perfectly fine also. I just chose to show it to you like this, but either way is fine. Okay, so when I'm looking at deepest, I'm looking at which one is the furthest to the left. Or if I was doing it this way, which is the furthest down, would have been the deepest. So as I can see, the shrimp is at the lowest level, and so it is the deepest. Okay? Now, the next thing, the question is the shark or the sea lion closer to sea level? So now, obviously, we are going to be using absolute value for that. Okay? So if I look at shark, the absolute value we're looking at the distance now from the sea level. Sea level is always considered 0. Okay, this is my sea level. So when I'm saying the distance of negative 4, that is the shark, from sea level, my distance is going to be 4 feet. And then I'm looking at the distance of the sea lion. And the sea lion, my distance from 0 is 5 feet. So obviously, which one is closer to the sea level? Okay, and it is definitely going to be the shark, because the distance of the shark from 0 is only 4 feet compared to the sea lion, which is at 5 feet. So remember this, okay? Distance from the sea level. We're going to do one last problem in which we are going to order numbers from least to greatest, okay? Now, don't assume that everything will be in absolute value form, because you may have to order along with absolute value. So let's say I give you number 4, I give you absolute value of 5, I give you 7, and I give you absolute value of -3. And then I say, order these numbers from least to greatest. Okay? So, if I'm looking at this, you know what, let me go ahead and I'm going to throw in an extra number here. Let me throw in a 0. And let me throw in a -3. I'm just throwing in these also because very often you make mistakes. All right. So now, first step, make sure that you solve the absolute values. So if I look at 5, absolute value of 5, what do I get? I get 5. Okay. Then I look at the absolute value of -3. That's the distance of -3 from 0. So this is going to be 3. Okay. So now here are my numbers. I have 4, 5, 7, 3, 0, -3. Now, think about it. If a number is more to the left, it is smaller. Okay? So if I'm looking at these numbers, so the smallest number, because it's going to be less than 0, okay, which is a negative number. So -3 is my smallest. Then I have 0. Then I know that the absolute value of -3 is 3. So this is my next number, because this is actually 3, the distance. All right. So this is the next. Then I have the number 4. Then I have absolute value of 5. And then I have 7. Okay, so when you write out the answers finally, you've got to put it in the original format. And that is why, even though I know the absolute value of -3 is 3, but when I'm writing the final answer, make sure that you put it in the original format. So here would be my final answer. Okay, so comparing and ordering. So anyway, this concludes our indicator 22. Please remember that absolute value, it is basically the distance of a number from 0. And then if I think about it, each integer will have 2 numbers, or there'll be 2 integers that have the same absolute value. Always remember that 2 integers will have the same absolute value. A number and its opposite, because they are both the same distance from 0 on the number line. So if I say which 2 integers have an absolute value of 9, you would say 9 and -9, because both are 9 units away from 0, because that is the distance, but obviously they're on opposite sides, but those 2 integers will have the same absolute value as 9. Okay, so have a great day, guys.